The Thanksgiving table fell silent when my mother gushed about my sister's fairy tale wedding. For the 10th time. Then she turned to me with that familiar, pitying smile. "And when will we finally get to plan your big day, sweetie?" I took a slow sip of wine, placed my glass down perfectly centered on the coaster, and said, "I had mine 3 months ago. In Paris, the sound of my father's fork clattering to his plate was the only response. The annual Thanksgiving dinner was always a masterclass in comparison. My sister Rebecca's 6-carat diamond engagement ring glittered under the chandelier as she recounted her destination wedding in Italy for what felt like the 100th time. My mother hung on her every word, interjecting with, "Remember the floral arches? And that designer gown was worth every penny." I sat quietly beside my husband David. We'd been exchanging small, secret smiles all evening, a private language forged through 8 years of partnership, 2 years of marriage, and 3 months of delicious secrecy. David squeezed my hand under the table. He knew what was coming. We'd planned for this moment. "And you, Sarah," my mother finally said, turning her attention to me with theatrical concern. "When will we finally get to plan your big day? A woman your age shouldn't wait too long." The implication hung in the air, heavier than the scent of roast turkey. At 34, I was apparently edging toward romantic expiration. The table went quiet. Rebecca looked smug. My father studied his plate intently. I took a slow, deliberate sip of Pinot Noir, buying a single moment of dramatic tension. I placed the crystal glass down, making sure it landed perfectly centered on the linen coaster. "I had mine," I said, my voice remarkably steady. 3 months ago. At sunset in a little stone chapel in the French countryside, just outside Paris." My mother's smile didn't just fade. It shattered. "What?" "David and I got married on August 14th, I clarified, reaching for his hand above the table this time. "It was small. Just us, the officiant, and a photographer we hired off the internet. It was perfect." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sharp clatter of my father's silver fork hitting his porcelain plate. You got married without us?" My mother's voice was a whisper, all the previous gaiety drained from her face. "Without your family?" "Exactly," I said, meeting her stunned gaze directly. "Without the guest list debates, without the seating chart drama, without your daily comments about how Rebecca's wedding was more elegant in planning. We wanted it to be about us, not about everyone else's expectations." Rebecca found her voice first, her outrage sharp and immediate. "How could you be so selfish, Sarah? Mom lived for planning my wedding. It was all she talked about for a year." "That's precisely the point, Beck," I said, turning to my sister. "It was your wedding, not mine. My wedding wasn't meant to be a sequel to yours, designed to be compared and critiqued for the next decade." David, wonderful, steady David, spoke for the first time. "We wanted something that was entirely ours. From the handwritten vows to the picnic we had afterwards by the Seine. It felt authentic to who we are as a couple." My father finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "Paris was all he managed. We flew into Charles de Gaulle, took the RER into the city, and found a little hotel in Montmartre," I explained, a genuine smile finally touching my lips at the memory. "The next morning, we took a train to a small village called Giverny. We got married in a chapel that Monet himself supposedly painted. We exchanged rings we designed together and vows we wrote for each other. Then we ate cheese and bread by the river until the stars came out. It cost us less than $3,000 total." My mother looked physically ill. 3,000? Rebecca's floral arrangements cost more than that. "I know," I said softly. "And her wedding was beautiful. But ours was ours." The dam of secrecy broke and I pulled out my phone. I opened my photos and slid it across the table. There we were, David in a simple, well-cut linen suit, me in a chic, knee-length ivory dress, both of us laughing under an arch of wildflowers. Another photo showed us holding hands in the chapel, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. A third captured us sharing a kiss as the sun set over the French countryside, the entire scene glowing with golden light. There were no bridesmaids, no groomsmen, no stressed-out parents, no seating chart, just pure, unadulterated joy. My mother scrolled through the photos, her hand trembling slightly. "You look happy," she conceded, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Loss, perhaps. Or maybe just the dawning realization that she had been entirely excluded from a milestone in her daughter's life. "I am, Mom," I said, reclaiming my phone. We didn't get married to put on a show. We got married because we love each other. And we did it in a way that felt true to that love." The perfectly curated Thanksgiving tableau was broken. The script had been flipped. And for the first time in my life, at the family dinner table, I held all the power. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. The turkey sat cooling, the green bean casserole congealing. My mother stared at me, a storm brewing behind her eyes. 3 months, she finally said, her voice dangerously low. You've been lying to us for 3 months. We've had family dinners, we've talked about the future, and you sat there and you lied. I admitted, I corrected gently. There's a difference. And we didn't lie when you asked how our romantic trip to France was. We told you it was the best trip of our lives. That was the truth, but a wedding, a marriage. Her voice rose, cracking with emotion. This isn't some backpacking trip through Europe, Sarah. This is a sacred institution, a family event. I didn't get to see my only other daughter walk down the aisle. Did you ever stop to think why I might not have wanted you there? The question left my lips before I could stop it, harsher than I intended, but true. My mother recoiled as if slapped. Rebecca gasped. Sarah, she scolded, but I was done. The years of living in Rebecca's shadow, of my life choices being measured against her superior ones, came pouring out from the moment David and I got serious. Every conversation about marriage was a comparison to Rebecca's wedding, I said, my voice gaining strength. The guest list wasn't about who we wanted, it was about who you'd be offended not to invite. The venue wasn't about what we liked. It was about whether it was as impressive as the country club. You didn't want to plan my wedding, Mom. You wanted to plan Rebecca's wedding, version 2. That is not true. My mother protested, but the flush creeping up her neck betrayed her, isn't it? David interjected, coming to my defense. When we casually mentioned we might like a small, outdoor ceremony, you spent 45 minutes telling us why a tented reception was a logistical nightmare, and that we should really consider a proper ballroom like Rebecca's. My father, who had been silent throughout, finally spoke. She has a point, Carol. All eyes turned to him. He rarely intervened in what he called mother-daughter drama. He looked at my mother, his expression tired. We did make everything about Rebecca's wedding for a solid year. We did pressure Sarah about timelines and traditions, maybe. Maybe they just wanted something for themselves. This unexpected allyship from my father seemed to deflate my mother's anger, leaving behind a raw, bewildered hurt. So that's it? She asked, her voice small. You just didn't want us there? It wasn't about not wanting you, I explained, my own anger softening into something sadder. It was about wanting us. For one perfect day, we didn't want to be Rebecca's younger sister and her nice boyfriend. We wanted to be Sarah and David, husband and wife, making a promise on our own terms. It wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of self-preservation. I looked at the stunned faces around the table. My proud sister, my defeated mother, my thoughtful father. We're still married, I said, holding up my left hand where a simple, elegant platinum band now rested beside my engagement ring. The paperwork is legal, the marriage is real. Your granddaughter didn't get a big party, but she got a partnership built on our terms, not on family expectations. The word granddaughter landed with a thud. My mother's eyes snapped to my hand, then to my face, a new, dawning horror in her eyes. Granddaughter? I hadn't planned to reveal this part, but the momentum was carrying me forward. And the secret I'd been carrying for 6 weeks was too big to hold back any longer. David squeezed my hand, a silent question. I nodded. We're having a baby, he said, his voice filled with proud, defiant joy. Due in May. The second bombshell of the evening detonated in absolute silence. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's eyes welled up. Rebecca just stared, her mouth agape. The Thanksgiving dinner was officially, irrevocably ruined, and I had never felt more free. The fallout was, as expected, monumental. The rest of the Thanksgiving meal was a quiet, tense affair. My mother retreated into a hurt silence while Rebecca oscillated between outrage and a strange, newfound respect. Only my father seemed genuinely happy for us, quietly congratulating us when we went to the kitchen for more wine. In the weeks that followed, my mother didn't speak to me. Then, 2 days before Christmas, a large, flat package arrived at our door. Inside was a beautifully framed, blown-up photograph from our wedding day, the one of David and me laughing under the floral arch in Giverny. Tucked into the frame was a note in my mother's elegant script. This is a beautiful photograph. You do look incandescently happy. It hurts that I wasn't there to see it. But perhaps I need to learn that your happiness doesn't always have to look like mine. We love you. Please come for Christmas. All of you. It wasn't a full surrender, but it was a start. We went to Christmas. It was awkward, but civil. My mother watched David with a new, more respectful eye. She asked gentle questions about the pregnancy, careful not to offer unsolicited advice. The ghost of Rebecca's perfect wedding was still in the room, but it no longer dominated the conversation. My daughter, Elara, was born on a sunny morning in May. The first flowers my mother brought to the hospital were French lilacs. I read they grow all over Giverny, she said, placing them carefully on the windowsill before asking if she could hold her granddaughter. The relationship is different now. It has to be. I established a boundary and it came at a cost. But it also reset the dynamics. My mother now understands that my life is not a performance for her approval, but a story I am writing for myself. Rebecca and I are closer, strangely enough. She confessed over coffee one day that she sometimes envied the freedom of our wedding. My wedding was for Mom, she admitted. Yours was for you. I think you were the brave one. David and I still look at our wedding photos often. That day in France feels like our secret foundation, a core memory of pure, unadulterated joy that belongs only to us. It set the tone for our marriage, a partnership built on our own terms. Elara is to now. She has my mother's eyes and her father's calm disposition. On her first birthday, my mother didn't throw an extravagant party. She asked what we were planning and offered to help in whatever way we wanted. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to show them who you truly are, even if it disappoints them. And sometimes, the most radical act of self-care is to claim your own milestones. Quietly and proudly, without permission, this secret wedding wasn't an act of exclusion. It was an invitation for my family to finally meet the real me, not the version I thought they wanted. And thankfully, eventually, they decided to accept.